On Friday, January 11th, 1991, just before 6:30 in the morning, 11-year-old Elissa Self left her house at 3844 Humphrey Street in South St. Louis to walk less than 3 blocks to catch her bus to Enright Classical Junior Academy, a school for gifted children. It was a cold, rainy morning, and Elissa's mother insisted that she wear boots and carry an umbrella. Elissa never arrived at school, and at about 8:20 in the morning, the school called Elissa's parents to tell them that Elissa was not present. Elissa's parents drove around the neighborhood looking for her, but they were unable to her, and they went home and called the police. During the next 4 days, police canvassed the neighborhood, interviewed possible witnesses, and investigated calls and letters on possible sightings. On Tuesday, January 15th, 1991, 2 persons who were scavenging at the Black Bridge recreation area along the St. Francis River, 135 miles south of St. Louis in Wayne County, found Elissa's body in a large pile of debris that had washed up on the river bank. Police soon searched the area and found Elissa's boots, but none of her other belongings. One of the small boulders that defined the perimeter of the parking area had been pushed out of place, and there was a tire rut in the gravel leading up to that boulder. The cause of death was ligature strangulation. There were 2 long, thin bruises, about 5 to 7 millimeters wide, around her entire neck. These bruises were consistent with a cord having been wrapped completely around her neck, with each end of the cord held in front of her. A pathologist testified that Elissa had been strangled to death slowly, losing consciousness after about 5 to 10 minutes and dying after about 30 minutes. Although she still may have been alive when her body was dumped in the river, the amount of brain damage she sustained from the strangulation indicated that she never would have regained consciousness. Because the cold water had preserved her body, the time of death could be established only during the interval between the time of her kidnapping to 24 hours before she was found. At about 9:24 p.m., on January 26, 1991, 11 days after Elissa's body was found, a City of Kirkwood police officer saw Martin Link driving with a headlight out and attempted to pull him over. Link led the officer on a high-speed chase, eventually crashing his car into a telephone pole, and was then taken into custody. In a search of the car, officers found a jar of petroleum jelly with Link's fingerprints on the jar and flecks of blood embedded in the jelly. In addition, officers took tape lifts from the inside of the car in order to obtain fiber evidence. During the investigation, officers discovered that Link had grown up 5 blocks from where Elissa was kidnapped and had attended the school near Elissa's bus stop. In the early 1905, Link lived in a house less than a mile away from the Black Bridge recreation area, the place where Elissa's body was found. At the time Link was arrested, he was living in South St. Louis, about 2 miles from where Elissa was kidnapped. Officers also discovered that Link was registered at a motel just outside of St. Louis from January 9, 1991 to January 11, 1991. Link checked out at an unknown time on January 11th, the morning that Elissa was kidnapped. That night, at about 1:55 a.m. on January 12th, Link checked into a motel in Deloge, Missouri, which is about 70 miles north of Black Bridge on a direct route from Black Bridge to St. Louis. A witness noted that Link's car was loud, like a car that had a bad muffler on it. At about 8:30 a.m., Link called the S&S muffler shop and was very insistent that he get his car fixed that day. He was told to bring in the car that afternoon and did so at 2:30 p.m. He explained to the employees that he was coming from further south and that he had to get his muffler fixed or else he would get a ticket in St. Louis. While he was at the shop, He kept pacing in the waiting room and checking to see if the work on his car was finished. While a mechanic was working underneath Link's car, clumps of orange clay of the same type found in the St. Francis River fell from the bottom of the car. The tailpipe was bent and broken loose from the muffler, and the muffler had been hit by something that smashed and punctured it. The muffler of Link's car had 12 inches of clearance, which was also the height of the rock that had been moved out of place at Black Bridge, where Elissa's body was found. As part of the investigation, a special agent at the FBI Crime Laboratory compared 3 fibers found on the front passenger seat of Link's car with fibers from the sweater Elissa had been wearing when she was kidnapped. The agent determined that the fibers found in Link's car were consistent with having come from the victim's sweater. DNA tests conducted by 2 different labs showed that Link's DNA matched the DNA found in sperm cells on vaginal swabs taken from Elissa's body. The state's DNA experts set the odds of such a match at 1 in 6,600. The testing also revealed that Elissa's DNA matched the DNA in the blood found in the petroleum jelly jar seized from Link's car. The odds of that match were 1 in 48. The joint probability of both of these matches occurring by chance was less than 1 in 300,000. Link did not testify at trial, but he called 2 witnesses who had reported seeing Elissa after 6:30 a.m. on January 11, 1991. He also called a detective who had worked with one of these witnesses to make a composite drawing of a man she allegedly saw with Elissa, but who did not resemble Link. He also called 2 witnesses who worked as buyers in the clothing industry to testify to the large number of cotton, Rami sweaters, like the one Elissa wore, that were imported every year. He called 2 DNA experts to testify that the DNA tests performed by the other 2 laboratories were faulty. In addition, one of the DNA experts and a 3rd expert testified that the state's conclusions about the probabilities of Link's DNA being found in the sperm on the vaginal swab and Elissa's DNA being found in the blood in the petroleum jelly jar were incorrect. Finally, Link called an accident reconstructionist who testified that the boulder at Black Bridge could not have damaged the muffler on Link's car. In rebuttal, the state presented its own accident reconstruction evidence. Investigating officers testified that they obtained a car of the same year and model, with the same kind of tires, bumper arrangement, and exhaust system as Link's car. They backed the car up to the boulder that had been moved out of place at Black Bridge, whereupon the tailpipe and muffler made contact with the boulder, thus showing that the boulder could have caused the damage to Link's car. At the close of the evidence, instructions, and arguments, the jury found Link guilty of kidnapping, forcible rape, and murder in the 1st degree. On October 13, 1995, Link was sentenced in St. Louis City to death for the crime of murder in the 1st degree. He was originally ordered to the custody of the Missouri Department of Corrections on November 23, 1993, for crimes committed prior to this sentencing structure. Martin C. Link was executed by lethal injection in Missouri on February 9, 2011. His final meal was a sausage and pepperoni pizza, lasagna, garlic bread, a chef's salad, New York-style cheesecake, a strawberry shake and Dr. Pepper. And his final words were, "The state says killing is wrong, so why do they do it? For revenge. Where is the closure? There is none. The death penalty is an act of revenge. Many men sit on death row, some innocent, some not. So what happens when a man is executed and it's later learned he was, in fact, innocent? He can't be brought back." The execution of Martin Link, the first in Missouri in nearly 2 years, was carried out at 12:15 a.m. local time Wednesday, February 9, 2011. at the state prison in Bonne Terre after last-minute appeals failed. The execution used sodium thiopental, a drug no longer made by Hospira, Inc., the only U.S. company that manufactured the drug. The company said recently that it will no longer make the drug because it does not want it to be used in executions. Missouri's last execution before Link was in 2009. The execution of Link was the fifth that year in the United States. There were 46 executions in the U.S. during 2010, down 12% from 2009. Thank you for watching Death Row.